Disclaimer, this podcast discusses mental health. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you're struggling with your mental health, please remember it's okay to ask for help and seek the appropriate help through a qualified healthcare professional.
Welcome back to the podcast where we ask the question, what makes you happy? My name is Jake Pearson, and today we have with us a life coach and author who helps retirees turn mundane into marvelous, chase away bored and depressed for an energized life of freedom and purpose. We have Sharon Rolph from Washington, United States. How are you?
I'm great, Jake. I'm glad to be with you in Australia today.
Thank you for linking up with us from all the way across the world in Washington. It's phenomenal to have you, and I'm super excited to hear what makes you happy. So would you mind starting with what does make you happy?
Well, it's kind of sad that so many of us don't know what makes us happy, but I came back from being out of town for 3-4 days, and first thing I did was go to my patio and water my plants. Oh, I like growing plants. Petunias and geraniums are my favorite. When I go for a walk, I like whistling at the birds, which also make the squirrels and chipmunks, even the crows will pay attention to me when I whistle at them. But I also love living from my heart. And I learned, one of the first things I learned as a coach was what was my essence or inner spark. And every day feels right, productive, ideal. And that's what I love showing other people how to be, because it's being authentically me. And how can you not be happy with that? And confidence comes with it.
Absolutely. I believe confidence comes from when you're able to just be yourself. And that's something I feel like a lot of people do struggle with. I know for a fact that it took me quite a long time, and I'm only 25, but in recent years to get to a point in my life where I thought, hey, this is me. I can be myself and it's okay. And so much confidence came with that. So I kind of resonate a lot with what you're saying, Sharon.
Well, and I felt most of my life invisible, not in a quiet, gentle kind of way, but as a 5, 6, 8, 10-year-old, being invisible was a strategy. And now in retirement, I have overcome that invisibleness, and that happens with others, that when you don't have a job and task and team to work with, who am I? You're still educated, you're still experienced, wisdom, talent, colleagues. So that didn't change when you left your job.
And I can say the same for parents. When the kids fly the coop, they lose that identity. Who am I? I'm outside of being a parent. So it happens in all aspects of life where people just start to, when they retire or they move on from a job, or they don't work anymore, or they don't have their children around, they kind of start to struggle to figure out who actually am I. And I bet you've seen that a lot as a coach, right?
Yes. I interviewed one lady that was bitterly, she was walking next to her daughter, and yet her daughter was talking as if she was invisible. And what hurt was that her employer made her leave her job during the pandemic because she'd been sick a couple years ago, and that was what was safe for them about her. And her daughter, like, oh, well, since you don't have a job, you're invisible. And she had loved her job. That was the hard part of that.
So Sharon, as a life coach and author, what would you say to our listeners who may be struggling with those exact same scenarios and are very unhappy?
Well, as some of your other shows, you talk about getting in touch with what makes you happy on the inside and being your authentic self. But nobody can take away, because that's your DNA. That's inside of you. When you're true to that, when I think back on how many times we told lies and stretched things, that it's being true to yourself, which is a secret you must discover before you die. Being true to yourself brings immense joy, happiness. You're right in your own skin, feeling contentment, meaning, purpose. Wow, what can be better than that?
I think that's beautifully said, being true to yourself. Sharon, thank you so much for sharing all things that make you happy. We really appreciate your time all the way from Washington.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. We hope it gives you something to think about on your quest to discover what makes you happy. Make sure to check out whatmakesyouhappypodcast.com to connect with today's guest and follow us on all our social media platforms and to stay up to date at what's happening next at What Makes You Happy. Don't forget to share this episode with a friend, and we'll see you next time.